and welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Donna Seymour. I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters, one of the civic partners for our show. Today, my guest is Bobbie Sackman with the Fair Pay for Home Workers Campaign. Bobbie was with us last in March to talk about the Fair Pay for Home Care Act. Bobbie, welcome back to North Country Matters for this update in the crisis in caregiving here in New York.
Thank you for inviting me back again. I appreciate it.
Well, we had such a great conversation back in March, and I'm hoping we can do the follow-up now and get some more good information in people's hands. There was a very robust spring campaign to pass the Fair Pay for Home Care Act. As it was first envisioned, passage would have wiped out the home care workforce shortage in less than 5 years, kept older adults and disabled people safe and out of nursing homes, and brought in 200,000 new home care workers into the field. So what actually got passed and enacted, Bobbie? Because unfortunately, we never hit the ideal, do we?
No, we don't, do we? So just to sort of piggyback first a little bit, it was a very robust campaign during the state's budget process. The highlight of it is from January to March. You might remember it went 1 week over this year. And that became a more tense week because things weren't finalized. I can come back to that in a moment. I'm going to quote Senator Rachel May, who is the chair of the Aging Committee, who was like the lead care champion on Fair Pay for Home Care. She said that the Fair Pay campaign, that the New York caring majority lit up Albany. Now, lighting Albany is not so easy.
That's
A lot
for
of people
sure.
there fighting for good causes, and you don't always get all the information you need, the transparency and all. But we lit up Albany. And I agree. It was amazing. I mean, we're going to continue, of course, but it was amazing. I'm going to tell you what we won. And you'll see that we're not done. We won a $3 an hour increase, $2 an hour beginning this past October 1st, and then an additional dollar next October 1st. Now, when you're talking about a workforce that's earning poverty level wages, biggest shortage in the nation of home care workers here in New York, it clearly doesn't take care of the problem. We're grateful that there was a step. It was a huge amount of money that got put into home care. This is all through the Medicaid program. So we thank Governor Hochul for that. We thank the state legislature. They were like the best champions. We had over 140 co-sponsors between the Assembly and the Senate, rural, suburban, urban, Democrat, Republican. We said we went from GOP to DSA. We did the whole realm because home care is recognized as a nonpartisan issue, as it should be. People needing care deserve to have a home care worker. The family members deserve the support. And of course, topping the list is home care workers deserve a living wage, a good wage for the job that they do. So that's where we were at the end of the budget process, which, as I mentioned, is around April 1st. And we're in a bit of a bureaucratic problem right now, which I have to admit is discouraging. So the way the state government is structured, and this started under Governor Cuomo, okay, Governor Hochul has inherited this, is the money goes from the State Department of Health, the budget office, to the State Department of Health, to what they call managed long-term care companies, i.e. insurance companies, the biggies, Health First, the multi-billion-dollar, ones. And then they should pass that money along to the home care providers who actually employ the home care workers. But the Department of Health passes the money along to the insurance companies with no requirement that they pass the money along to the home care providers. So guess what? Surprise, they don't. They do a little bit. I shouldn't say they don't anything, but way below what's needed for the most part across the board. So what happens is that as of October 1st, the home care workers did get the increase. They've been taken care of, but there's a couple of buts. Right now, the home care providers, the home care agencies, are footing most of that bill. They can't sustain that, or they have to get loans or reserves, or they might have to pull back on some of the benefits to the workers, overtime, sick time, etc. We could end up with less home care or more problems trying to get folks to come into this field. There is language in the Fair Pay for Home Care legislation specifically addressing this, because apparently this has happened in the past when there's been a small increase. And the language, I can't tell you the specific language, but it covers this issue. But that language wasn't passed in the budget. So right now it's just part of a bill. So it's very discouraging when you work so hard, you light up Albany, and you know that you're right on the mark and what millions of New Yorkers are concerned about. And then you hit this wall, this systemic wall. So we are pushing back as a coalition. There's the state Senate and the state assembly 2 or 3 weeks ago released letters from each of the chambers signed on by a lot of legislators to Mary Bassett, who was the commissioner of the Department of Health, basically saying, fix it. But the legislature doesn't have the power to fix it. Only the Department of Health or Governor Hochul. So that's really where this lies. We could blame the insurance companies forever, which I do, but the responsibility to fix it is Governor Hochul and the Department of Health. Having said that, we're still, and you could ask me more questions there because I would gladly, move it forward. We are relaunching our campaign. We're not done by any means. So, but I just needed to point that out, that we're still having to push for this.
Bobbie, what you're talking about here is what we often find. It takes so much work to get consensus about what the problem is, and then to come to consensus about a solution. And then somehow or other in the regulation and in the fine print, it kind of falls apart. And so we have to keep going back and working the problem again and saying, well, this is a shortfall, it needs to be fixed. And with the new legislative session coming up in January, I'm sure Albany is still going to be paying a lot of attention to this problem. So if we can't get the Department of Health and the governor to fix it now, maybe they can address it in January and start carrying a big stick, maybe.
Well, if nothing else, I agree with you totally. If nothing else, there's a flame that's been lit that this problem with Department of Health and the insurance companies even exists. See, I don't even know if the state legislature knew this before. Some of them are new and, whatever, and some of them are not going to get into the weeds so much on this. It's not the position they have. But now they know. And they know, and we're going back, we're sort of amending the bill to make it stronger. And this will be one of the pieces we look at. What was so wonderful, remains wonderful about the New York Caring Majority Coalition is it's older adults, people with disabilities, family caregivers, and home care workers, but it's also home care providers, home care agencies. That's not usually what happens. And the reason is because we're all on the same page as to the need and the cause of the problem being the wage, and also protecting the home care agency so it doesn't become what's called an unfunded mandate, which is what they faced. I have to pay you, but you're not giving me the funding. That's an unfunded mandate. So they know we're all on the same page with this. And as I said, we'll continue to push it.
So We have more work to do. We always have more work to do. So these issues are big issues. As you pointed out, it's not a partisan issue. It affects every segment of the population. We're still in the same crisis in every corner of New York State, whether it's urban or rural or suburban, because the need is there and there are just not enough people. And it's right now, it's very hard to attract people to this profession. One of the things we've seen is all across the state, there are help wanted ads. And those folks, in order to get the help they need to run their business, they have to pay competitive prices. And home
Yes.
care work is not competitive. Those prices are not, are they?
No, so it's sort of you've hit, bingo. So there's sort of I live in New York City, so I go on the subways, right? And I have seen cars full of ads. I don't remember the name of was it Premier called? Anyway, for home care, like there's ads, right? One whole subway car was just for this one home care agency advertising for home care workers. I'd never seen that like to that degree, certainly in the past. The challenge, problem, whatever you want to call it, is it might differ in different parts of the state. But if there's a Target's, if there's another big chain kind of store, a restaurant of some kind, and if they're paying $20 an hour because they've had trouble and they give benefits, then how are you going to get people into home care? And I just to segue a little bit, home care is not a low wage. It's not a minimum. Home care is not a minimum wage job. Everybody has the right to earn a living wage. So this is not about that. But home care is a healthcare job. And it's not babysitting. Yes, you might have to help somebody eat. Well, for God's sakes, that's pretty important to life, right? You might have to help them take a shower, get dressed. You might have to help them get in and out of bed, which is not easy if someone is dead weight, in a sense, right? If they can't move or they can't move much. I don't know if you've ever heard of these Hoyer lifts where they put you in this thing and you lift you up and that takes skill and work. And by the way, a lot of home care workers sustain injuries, as you can imagine, back injuries especially. If you need any kind of assistance with breathing, respiration, they have ventilators, older adults or person with a disability, somebody has to know how to manipulate that. Is there enough oxygen? Or if a little beep goes off, does someone know how to correct it? Again, that's life and death, but that's a skill. That's really a skill. And of course, the medications, but also treating somebody humanely and having patience and interacting with the family. If there's a family involved, that's not always the easiest thing. It could, hopefully it works out, but we know people are people. And so this is a skilled job, and home care workers have never gotten that recognition, certainly not through their wage and in other ways as well. So I really want to, elevate that this is not just a minimum wage job. This is a skilled home care job that we as individuals and as a society are becoming more and more dependent on. And we need to recognize it by paying them a fair wage.
Yeah, you make a really good point about the skills that are needed and the fact that there's a whole set of interpersonal skills as well that are needed in order to manage someone's care. So, Bobbie, let's talk a little bit about how the caregiving crisis might look different in different parts of the state.
Okay.
In terms of who needs care, who's giving care,
Right.
where the shortages really are.
So one of the things, first of all, we talk about, and I've discussed with you, Donna, is this idea of care across the lifespan. And I'm here talking about home care, which is obviously for an older adult at older age, but obviously a person with a disability, it could be at any age. And then there's childcare, but it's the idea of what has become to be called the care economy. And it is our economy. It's not only jobs, it's what keeps loved one's home, and it impacts the family caregivers. And this is where I'm going to segue to your question as well. Most of the home care workers are women. Most of the family caregivers are women. It doesn't mean men do not help, but it's just the fact that it's mostly women. Most of the hands-on personal care tends to be women. There's a Washington Post article that appeared back in the spring that said that I think it was 4 million more women, and now this is national, 4 million more women left their jobs because of elder care than child care. Now, again, we're not pitting the generations. However, who knows that? It doesn't usually get played out that way publicly. And it just, again, shows you the incredible need and how it falls onto the backs of women. And if you have to leave your job or work part-time or get stuck in a job, that's your financial future. That's your social security. Never mind your physical and psychological health as well. And so this is who it's impacting. Now, again, I live in New York City. We have a large immigrant population, and many of the home care workers are women of color and immigrant women, which is one of the reasons I think they get taken advantage of as well. I know that, for example, where you live, Donna, you have a different population. It's going to be more a white population than obviously in New York City. I'm here to advocate for the whole state. I don't care where you live. If you need a home care worker, somebody wants to be a home care worker, they should get paid properly and people should get care. So that's my bottom line. I do believe, I don't have the actual data, but from what I've heard and learned, anecdotally, I do believe that there's a bigger shortage, what I call upstate New York. You probably call downstate New York, but we'll say north of Westchester County. Okay, how's that? That the rural areas, well, because there's less people. Mm-hmm. And young people, as we know, have left rural areas in large numbers. And so whoever's, left in the community, we say it takes a village, but the village has dwindled.
You make a really good point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I can tell you anecdotally up here where I live, for the folks who are trying to find home care workers, it is a patchwork quilt of trying to, and especially depending on the need. If you need someone 24 hours, 7 days a week, you are going to have a lot of people coming through your home because people just are doing this part-time. They're working other jobs, maybe a job where they're actually getting a benefit. This is not a job they're getting a benefit for.
Right.
And it's extremely difficult to put those patchwork quilts together. There aren't enough people. And if we want to keep our elders at home, which we do, and which older adults want to stay in their own home, finding help is a struggle.
And I would add another layer to that. I've never received home care, okay? And someday I might need it. But imagine you've got one or more people touching your body to care for you. That's very personal. I mean, they call it personal care, but that's very personal. It can be very intimate. So imagine you have a stream of people coming in and doing that, and there's turnover. So it's another new person. And I think you get the picture. That's got to be even gut-wrenching at times for somebody to go through, and probably also for their family members to watch, to see, So it's also that the steadiness, the consistency of the home care worker, and for whatever reason they can't or choose not to stay. That's a whole other level that I think doesn't really get talked about, but it's awful, isn't it? I just think
it is
awful.
It is, I agree. And one of the other things that happens is you may have a home care worker who is doing a fabulous job for you, and that person has to quit to take care of a family member at home themselves, and they can't work out anymore. So the scheduling nightmares that come around this, and and I think a lot of people get pushed into institutional care because they
Right.
can't find they're probably well enough to be home, but they can't find the help they need. So,
Right.
these continue. And one of the things that we know about these family caregivers is it's mostly free care. They're not being
Yes.
compensated, and that's a huge impact on their lives. But it's also a drain on the economy, isn't it? Because they're not being productive in other ways.
No, absolutely. There's a number that came through AARP some years ago that in New York State there are 2.5 million caregivers, family caregivers, providing 31 billion with a B dollars of free care. I mean, that's enormous. And the state is letting them down in many ways. And the other thing is, if you do leave your job, there's a good chance you're a woman over the age of 50, let's say, give or take, right? Because that's when your parents are, have grown old. Try getting back into the workforce at any level you might have been in, because then you hit the whole age discrimination in the workforce issue. So again, your financial future, becomes is put in jeopardy as well, and it's sort of this multi-layered. I just think that where a shift has to happen is what I said earlier about care across the lifespan. Is that when we talk about the need for care and the ability to live one's life, it has to go from, again, even prenatal care, I'm just saying, but, maternal care, daycare, childcare, all the way to home care, because that's how people live their lives. And that impacts other people in their lives, as we're discussing. And that's the shift. Now, Governor Kathy Hochul, we celebrate that we have the first woman governor in New York State. Yes, I think that's great. She knows about home care and she has said this publicly. Her father receives, I believe it's 24-hour home care. He lives in Florida. She has siblings, so I think they all contribute. And so she's living this. She understands this well. And so we're hoping that personal experience, plus her job as leader of the state, she will see how necessary and that this is the right road. I think this is such a win-win for her. Nobody is against home care. I mean, who's against home care?
No, you make a
I don't
great
know
point.
anybody against home care.
Boy, if you need it or want it, you're not against it.
I don't know, I mean, so, and yet it'll meet this increasingly important need in the North Country and every other corner of the state. So it seems like a really good win-win. Not just me, but the caring
one of the
majority.
things the governor just did was to set in place a master plan for aging here in New York State. They're going to create a council to look at the issue in terms of improving
Right.
the quality of your life for seniors. And we know from the demographics in New York State that the future caregiving needs are only going to increase as our population ages, don't we?
Yeah, so a couple of things. The master plan on aging, you're right, the governor released what they call an executive order to set up a structure. She put some funding into it, I believe. And the idea is they will be, they call it a stakeholder advisory council. And I don't know, but I would imagine there's going to be other like task forces or committees, because the stakeholder advisory council, while the number's not set, doesn't sound like it's going to be that big considering the whole state. So there's got to be other ways they can reach folks. And this began in California, I think. I think California did this. And so the idea would be to come up with a plan, specifics, and probably includes proposed legislation and other items, and to have it all in one place and give it the attention that's needed. I think this is a great thing. I do want to say that many of us know what a lot of the problems are. And so while we want to fully, embrace this effort, it puts attention on it. There's always new information, new ideas could come out that, we hadn't thought of before. I don't want it to take away from the attention of what we're fighting for right now. Obviously there'll be a process of, I don't know what the timeline is, but what, a year to go through it and come out with recommendations, and then it goes on and on. And as we started our discussion, nothing happens quickly in Albany. So I just want to point that out, that while we appreciate what Governor Hochul has done, because you need to put light on this, on the aging issues, we need to keep moving, at a good pace ahead with home care and other issues helping older adults as well.
Yep, you're exactly right. And one of the ways, we have to attract more people to caregiving, and we can't do it just by looking at the minimum wage. So, Bobbie, what are the next steps for the Fair Pay campaign?
Okay. So we're doing a relaunch, that's what we're calling it, in the first half of December. One of the things that's going to happen is there's going to be what they call a caravan. I love that, caravan. And it's not coming to your neighborhood, though. I'm sorry for that. As far as I know, and I don't know that it's been set, I think it's sort of like Buffalo, Rochester, I guess Albany, probably Hudson Valley, Westchester, and then Manhattan, probably into New York City. And obviously the idea is to highlight the Fair Pay for Home Care campaign and have different events along the way. I don't know the details of the planning. I'm not working on that directly. But so we'll have this caravan. I do know that in December, what we're going to do in Manhattan is hopefully be located in the senior center, where we'll do a whole launch of this home care campaign, and let folks know what we're about, and try to get some press coverage, and take it from there, and then start pushing again, going back to Albany. What was amazing at the last session is that the last 2 weeks of the budget, so sort of the end of March, beginning of April, and I was there, we were there for 2 solid weeks. Monday to Friday, about 25, 30 of us. It was pretty amazing that we got a lot of attention, but that was the dedication. And that also is very good for bonding. You really get to care and know about people. I also want to point out one thing. The folks with disabilities who needed a home care worker to be in Albany, the campaign paid their home care workers the same amount of money that a Fair Pay for Home Care was passed, $22.50 an hour. Fair Pay for Home Care is 50% of the minimum wage. So if it's $15, it becomes $22.50. They were paying for these couple of weeks that amount to the home care workers. So we were building the world we want to live in. And it worked out. People got really good care. The home care workers were obviously very appreciative, and it allowed us to be there for 2 weeks.
Well, you were modeling what you wanted to see happen across the state. So, Bobbie, how can New Yorkers from every part of the state, upstate, downstate, rural, urban, how can they get involved to help find solutions to these problems that face all of us?
Well, there is a website, NewYorkCaringMajority.org. You can sign up, you put your email in, and you'll get emails. There's a video up there of an older woman needing home care. There's other information up there. We have this 70-foot scroll. People can sign if they need home care and they can't get it. You can submit your name. So there are other ways. And then by email, you'll get notified of like Zoom meetings. If we find out somebody locally is interested, then there will be folks that would reach out and talk to them too. So it's not just techie, people would contact them and say, hey, you want to do something locally, or, how do we do this together? Yeah, we're very much interested in building the number of people that participate. We're especially interested to reach older adults and family caregivers. They're a little hard to reach sometimes to get
Mhm.
involved. Sometimes it's just making one phone call to your state legislator.
Well, and one of the things we know is we're going to
Yeah.
have some new state legislators this year.
Yes.
I know we've sent new folks to Albany from upstate, so they'll have to be educated about
Yes.
these issues right from the get-go. So having folks all across the state do that kind of work is going to be really important.
I want to point out something. I was on a call the other day, and this woman who works for an elected official said if she gets 20 letters on the same issue, they pay attention. And I had actually heard that years ago. That's all it takes sometimes. 20 letters.
Yeah, because
Not a lot of letters.
they assume each one of those letters represents 100 people out in the field who haven't said something but want to say something. Bobbie,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing how the campaign develops in 2023, and we'll have you back when it's time for more advocacy to give us some tips and some pointers. So thank you
Okay.
again.
Thank you very much.
So these conversations are a production of North Country Matters. It is a civic collaboration between the League of Women Voters of St. Lawrence County and the Potsdam Public Library. Until next time, remember, our North Country matters.